Okay, you're good.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the select board meeting for the town of Barrington, November 2nd, 2020. Under RSA 91-A, emergency provisions, as chair of the Barrington Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which has been authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible via video or electronic means. We're utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting, and all members of the select board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting. Phone participation can take place by dialing 1-603-664-0240 and entering conference ID 676-749-973 hashtag or #. Video participation can take place by clicking on the link on the town site for bit.ly/BARRSB. And I think it reads 2020-11-2. Or backwards, but it's on there. Providing public notice is necessary information for accessing this meeting. This notice publicly and are providing access using Microsoft Teams. Instructions have been provided on the town website, www.barrington.newhampshire.gov. By providing this mechanism for the public, we expect that the public will alert us during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call 664-0146 or email administration@barrington.newhampshire.gov. Our town administrator will fix everything. Adjourning the meeting will take place if for some reason the public is unable to access the meeting and participate. In the event that the access to the meeting has to be changed, you'll be notified. The meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled, and you'll be notified on the town site. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting by roll call vote. Let us start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance of the select board. Beginning with, do we have select person Air on yet?
No, I just spoke with him and he'll be joining shortly.
Yep, beginning with select person Bailey, please.
Bailey, aye.
Nope. Address, please, sir.
Oh, that's right, too. Here we go. George Bailey, 19 Chesley Drive. I'm home here in my office. There's nobody here that's going to influence my vote if it's necessary to have one.
Very good. Select person, Vice Chair Knapp.
Andrew Knapp, 96 Lindsay Point Road, Barrington, obviously. My wife, my son, and the dog are in the house, and I am locked in the office, so I don't think anybody will be influencing my vote.
Select person Sakosha with the Best of New Hampshire's electrical group.
Thank you. Jim Sakosha, 21 James Henry Drive. Here with my dogs. Nobody's here to influence my vote.
And Tracy Hardikoff, 48 Stone Farm Drive, Barrington. I am home with currently, I think, my husband and dog. My son will be joining us at some point, but no one will be in the room with me or influencing my vote. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Select person Air, have you joined us?
Yes, I have.
Could you state your address, please, and who is with you where you are currently located?
I'm at 334 Old Concord Turnpike. I'm in my office. There's no one here. It's my vote. The doors are locked.
Very good. First up, public hearings. So this is interesting for me. I actually asked for a quick script on this. So the select board will be holding 4 separate public hearings regarding the sale of town-owned land pursuant to RSA 41:14-A. The lots are being sold directly to abutters and must be merged with the abutting property. Each sale has been reviewed and recommended by the Town Lands Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board. The notice attached to the Town Administrator Report provides additional details, including a map and property record card for each property. There will be a second public hearing November 16th, and the Select Board will vote on these 4 potential sales on November 30th. First up for public hearing, we're opening a pursuant to RSA 41:14-A for the sale of map 102 lot 62. Do I have any comments at this time from the Select Board?
I have none.
Okay, seeing as we have no comments, do we have any comments from the public regarding the sale of map 102-0062? If you're in the public and you'd like to speak, you can do this by a few mechanisms. You can dial 664-0146 and alert our town administrator you'd like to speak. You can unmute your phone if you're attending just using your phone, and that is a *6. It sometimes takes more than one try in order to unmute your phone. And if you're attending electronically, if you take your hand and you mouse over your screen, if it happens to be a touch screen, or mouse over your pad, it should bring up the keypad for this platform. And you'll see a little hand in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that, you will alert us that you'd like to speak in this public hearing. I will give it 15 seconds to see if anyone from the public would like to speak on the sale of this lot. Seeing as we have no one participating from the public in reference to this public hearing, I will move on to open a do I need to close that public hearing? Yes. So I would like to close the public hearing regarding the sale of map 102 lot 62 per RSA 41:14-A. I would then like to open a public hearing for the sale of map 112 lot 49 per RSA 41:14-A. This again could open comment from the Select Board. If you would like to speak, Select Board, please notify me.
No, I have none.
And comment from the public. Again, I'll give it 15 seconds. You can mouse over, bring the hand up in the upper right-hand corner, click on that to alert us you'd like to speak. You can call the town administrator at 664-0146 if you're having any technology issues. And if you'd like to speak, but you've dialed in just on your phone, please feel free to hit *6 on your phone and alert us that you'd like to speak during this public hearing. I think given that we've had an appropriate time frame for that, I will close the public hearing on map 112 lot 49 per RSA 41:14-A. At this time, I will open a public hearing for the sale of map 126 lot 18 per RSA 41:14-A. Is there anyone from the Select Board that would like to speak on the sale of map 126-18?
No.
Anyone from the public? Given that we have had no response from the public, I will close the public hearing pursuant to RSA:14-A for the sale of map 126 lot 18. I will now open a public hearing for the sale of map 273 lot 34 per RSA 41:14-A. Anyone from the Select Board wish to comment or speak on this issue?
No.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to comment and speak during this portion of a public hearing about the sale of map 273 lot 34? Last chance on that. I'm going to close the public hearing regarding the sale of map 273 lot 34 per RSA 41:14-A. Thank you all for attending that portion of our meeting. Up for appointments today is an alternate member appointment for the Conservation Commission for Jennifer Stewart. Would anyone like to make a motion or does anyone, go ahead, George?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve as a Conservation Commission alternate member, Jennifer Stewart.
Very good. Do I have a second on that?
Yeah,
Thank you, Select Person Sakosha. Dan, I can't see you. If there's a way you can click on your video, that would be helpful.
I can see.
I can see
So-
him.
I'm sorry, can you see him?
Oh, yeah.
I
wonder
can't.
I can't. So roll call vote, please, beginning with Select Person Air.
air I.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all very much. Next appointment is the raffle permit request for Barrington Republican Town Committee. Any questions, comments, concerns, or a motion?
We'll make a motion to allow the Barrington Republican Town Committee to proceed with their raffle permit.
And I see a second by Select Person Sakosha. Could I have a roll call vote on that, beginning with Select Person Air?
Air I.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff, aye. Motion carries. Thank you all. Next up is our library budget presentation. Why do I have Dash John Huckins on here?
That is a great question, and Melissa asked the same thing. She thought she was getting away scot-free having John present her budget, but that was just simply an error on behalf of your town administrator. It was
Okay.
corrected on the online document, but the printed materials the select board have still reflect John Huckins.
Okay, well
Are we
then.
going to get a rebate with that, Madam Chair?
I'm not
Send me a
sure.
bill.
Okay, presentation of the library budget committee, library budget presentation, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me this evening, and I look forward to sharing our budget presentation with you and answering some of the questions that were posed by the EBC. So first off, Connor, can I share my screen?
Yes. So if you, on the upper right corner, you should see a rectangle with an arrow pointing up, the kind of share icon next to leave, or if you,
Oh, there we go.
yep. And then you
Perfect.
can select an
Thank
individual
you.
window or your entire desktop.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem. Great. Yep, that came over for me.
That came over all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here we go. It's kind of short and sweet because there weren't too many changes this year. So my first interesting factoid that I wanted to share was it was exactly 225 years ago today that the Barrington Social Library was formed, which I thought was pretty darn exciting. Considering, you know, here we are doing a budget presentation and it was this long ago that the library was even formed. And it was formed as a social library where the first members had to pay 18 shillings, followed by an annual 2 shillings for dues. The first librarian was Reverend Benjamin A. Balch, who was the clerk and was served as the librarian for 15 years. Another interesting fact was that for 26 years, the Barrington Social Library had no physical location until 1821, when it was noted that it was the home of Jeremiah Kingman. I guess throughout those few years, the library was held at different places, such as the Congregational Church and some of the other social club members' homes. And then in 1954, according to some folklore I've heard, that the public library was located in the grade school, and I think we may have been the original Harry Potter, because the folklore says that the library was actually in a room under the stairs in the grade school. So I thought that was kind of a fun other little library tidbit.
That's
Any
awesome.
of you Harry Potter fans out there. So first of all, I wanted to highlight some of the changes that we saw in our budget, and they were in regards to salary and wages, and that was just a result of the select board so graciously approving step increases for all town employees this year. And that rate of change was $5,655. And then the ABC had a question about why there was such a large full-time hourly surplus from this year. And that was due to our technology and circulation library assistant, whose last day was July 4th. And then our new hire didn't start until October 5th. And as I'm sure as many of you know, that advertising and hiring during a pandemic is totally different than having regular operations. So it took a bit longer, and that is the result of having that vacancy for a couple of months. Next is our benefit line has changed, but not as much as it was originally reported due to the health insurance rates changing and also current staffing in consideration to their census changes. So that total rate of change is $5,591. The other change, which is a negative or a positive, in depending on how you look at it, is our library building and improvements maintenance line went down to $2,400 because we had a big ticket item last year of having our automatic doors being installed this year, which we were able to do while we were closed to the public, which was a huge help. Being able to, get that work done and not have to actually, we were already closed to the public due to the pandemic, but being able to have that project done while we were closed and not having to, cause any disruption to our services to the patrons was a huge bonus. And those have already come in handy. So thank you to everyone for supporting that project. We greatly appreciate that. The next line that had a slight increase of $100 was our book maintenance line. And when we order our books through our particular vendor, they come to us sometimes pre-covered, and those book covers, whether they're that Mylar dust jacket or a harder laminate, helps increase the durability and the longevity of those items. And then we also have to purchase some of those same coverings that we use for items that we replace later on in our, if a book goes missing or is lost and we have to replace that particular item. So because of that and the slight increase in the cost of all of those materials, I did request a $100 increase in my budget to cover that change. The other line that had a small increase was our dues and fees line. One of it was accounting for a slight increase in our membership dues and also for our movie licensing costs. When we show movies in the library or when the recreation department has their summer camp and we have movie times for them, our movie license covers the cost of having those movies be shown instead of having to do a pay per use type thing. And then the other addition that we had is $145 of the $170 go towards the monthly Zoom account that we've been using for all of our programming during this whole pandemic and not being able to hold programming in person. And one more addition that we requested was the change in our books and multimedia line. This has pretty much stayed at that $18,000 mark for about the last 2 years, maybe 3, if my memory serves me right. And I asked for a $1,000 increase to this, along with my following line, the digital materials. And one of the reasons behind that is during this whole pandemic, the trustees have voted to support the idea of not charging our patrons fines or fees for overdue items, because we understand that things are really different right now. And some people aren't comfortable coming in. We understand that life happens. If they're sick and they don't want to share that information, whatever the reason may be. And just out of, the willingness to help everybody and make the library accessible to everybody, no matter demographics, needs, what have you, not charging fees or fines during this pandemic has been important to us. And so that means a loss of revenue for us since we are not taking in that money. And so that is why we had an increase in $1,000 for our books and multimedia line and also in our digital materials line, slightly different increase on that line due to we belong to the New Hampshire Downloadable Consortium, and that is what gives us access to New Hampshire Overdrive, or Libby, if you guys use the Libby app. And that's something that all state libraries, if they wish to participate, have to buy into. And this year it was voted across the state to increase the budget by 14% to meet the demands of all the books and ebooks, audiobooks, magazines that people wish to borrow. The 14% increase affects us by being $377 above what we paid last year. So this year that amount was, I believe, 3580, 3560, excuse me, is what our new fee will be for that. And then the other item that we wanted to increase is our Hoopla usage. And that is on our end, it is a pay per use service where we can set a monthly rate of how much we are willing to spend. And that gets broken down into a daily rate. So, and we have it capped at nothing more than, I believe, $3.99 can be borrowed. And we also have limits on how many people with a library card can access that service. It's not just open to anyone. You have to set up an account with your library card in order to access this. And typically, when this was first started, it was started as a donation by a patron who really wanted us to have the service. And then from there, our friends group said that they would pay for half. And then over the years, it turned into our fines and fees covering some of that difference of what the town has allotted for us and what we would really like to offer to our patrons. And again, because we weren't charging fines and fees, our revenue has changed. So therefore, we are putting some of that cost back into our budget to be part of our operating budget, because this is a service to our patrons in a multitude of ways. Not only does it give our patrons access to a larger variety of items, but it also prevents us from having to buy so many more other items that patrons wish to borrow. For example, a lot of our patrons enjoy watching BBC and Acorn type TV series. Those are extremely expensive. I had to replace one when I first got here, and I think it was about $50 or $60 for just one CD or one season. So over time, this really helps provide a huge variety of items to our patrons above and beyond what the New Hampshire Downloadable Consortium does, because Hoopla also allows or offers ebooks and audiobooks, but they also offer graphic novels, music, magazines, and some TV and movie series, which is kind of cool. And then a couple of the questions from the ABC in regards to these digital item increase was, with the increased utilization of these digital resources, is there a need for the same level of part-time staff and staff coverage? Well, yes, because a lot of this digital stuff happens in the background, but we still have all of our other library-related activities still happening within the library. We've also have been able to work on weeding our collection. We're working on getting a inventory of our whole collection done. So there's still a need for having our part-time staff because we still have to help people that come into the building get their items checked out, have them copy, fax, whatever that may be. And then someone else had posed the question of what's the further definition of circulation when 50% of circulation is digital. Everything else that we would have to offer. The reason I had worded that a little differently in my budget this year in the narrative, since we were closed the middle of March, and then we did not open back up to the public to come into the building until the middle of August. So from that amount of time, our digital usage flew through the roof, and that ended up taking over our circulation for all of our in-house materials. So since we weren't having patrons in the building and not being able to access everything, they had to go through digital resources to get them. And that's why we saw our circulation increase by 50%. And I put a little quote in there from one of our patrons that said, "Thank you for reopening curbside pickup. We know it's different and a lot of extra work. We so appreciate your effort and are grateful." Excuse me, this is in my way. We are grateful for this service. Thank you and be well. One thing I didn't include is my little wall of gratitude that's on our door and all the little notes we've gotten since we've opened back up to the public. One person even said, "Thank you for helping me have some sort of form of sanity." Because a lot of people have missed being able to come in and use our books. A lot of people begrudgingly turn to digital resources because that was their only option. A lot of parents with homeschool students and that sort of thing. And then our updated budget numbers, our wages and benefits is now $305,171. Our operating budget is $53,269. The total budget of $358,440. with a total change of $13,367, which is about 3.87%.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And
We
of course, if
have,
there's any questions, I will be
yeah, I'm going to ask if we have
more than
Steve,
happy.
the head of our advisory budget committee, on this call.
Yes, I'm on.
Excellent. Want to take over for a bit, Steve?
Sure. I thank you, Ms. for the presentation. It was very good and answered most of the questions that we do have. And your presentation, as many presentations do, did raise one other question that I have regarding the hoopla. And I agree that it's a service that that is beneficial. But if I may, as you explained that the increase in the cost, I think you mentioned that the main purpose for the increase is because your board has now decided not to charge for that service to the people who used it. Did I understand that correctly?
No, what it is when Hoopla was first offered to our patrons, it was started as, we're going to give this a try and see how it goes. And because we were unsure of how popular this service would be with our patrons, we decided, the friends and the trustees and the previous director opted to share the cost, so that it used to be split 50-50 down the middle. The town would be responsible for 50% of the cost, and then the library would be responsible for the other 50%. And it's not something that we charge the patrons. We pay for it. They don't see any of the cost. It does not cost them $3.99 to borrow a movie or a DVD. It's what we have on our end that we pay as part of our monthly budget for that.
Okay, so I see that now that the friends then are no longer contributing 50% of the cost, and you expect the library and the town to pick up the rest of that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that had always been kind of from what I understand when this whole service was first offered, that it was one of those trials, see how it works. And if the statistics were there, that it would slowly be increased over the years. And then at some point there would be a point where the town or the library budget would take over more of the responsibility versus the library or the friends.
Okay, and I do have one other follow-up question, and that has to do with since things are being acquired digitally, and that is a big part of your circulation now. I understand very definitely the need to provide the curbside service, and that's something that will continue, I'm sure, as long as we're dealing with the Chinese virus. But once that virus is lifted, our restrictions related to that are lifted, do you see with the digital use continuing at the level it is, or increasing even?
That's a really good question. And so far, it's because I keep monthly statistics of this because it has to be reported to the state at the end of the year. And I'm thinking, now that we are open a little bit longer, we can have patrons in the building. Curbside has been going. I mean, even since we've opened in August, our in-house circulation numbers have already doubled. But that also goes to show that our digital use has not changed. If anything, it's either stayed the same. In some months, it's gone up and down just a smidge. So I see, like, as we move forward, since so many people now have experienced what it is to use digital resources, and they realize it's not as scary or intimidating as they may have previously thought it was, that they would be more willing, instead of being, ninth on the list for the actual book here, they could go and borrow it digitally and have it in their hands a lot quicker. So I think that as things move forward, I think that the use of our digital resources will either stay the same or continue to increase.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm assuming for the operating side of the budget, we will have another opportunity, Tracy, to discuss the warrant article.
T.A. MacGyver, do you want to speak to that? The warrant article, do you want to wait to discuss that towards the end of our budget meetings, or should we be discussing it tonight?
No,
No, I
we,
think it would be great to discuss it tonight, like we have with a couple of other warrant articles. The only warrant articles so far that are on hold are some of the ones from the Highway Department, just as the Select Board was deciding some of the specifics on projects. And so I know that the chair of the Library Trustees is also joining us tonight, and is interested and willing in answering some of the questions that the Budget Committee had posed. And I had sent out some information ahead of time that I received today, kind of pursuant to those questions. So if the board and budget committee are interested and willing, I think the library is prepared to discuss that warrant article request tonight.
we were
Excellent.
definitely going to have it be shared. I was going to do just the regular staffing operating budget on my end. And then as long as you guys are okay with it, I know Lindsay was going to step in and take over for any of the warrant article related items, unless there was a question about the capital reserve for the technology piece. I'd be more than happy to answer any of those questions.
I do have a budget.
Related to the building.
I have a budget question after the ABC is done.
Yep. Are you done with your portion of the operating budget, Steve?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair Knapp.
Yep. I was just curious, and forgive me for not knowing this, but how many hours a week were you open pre-pandemic versus how many hours a week are you open now?
We are back to our regular hours, with the exception of Saturday being curbside only from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m.
And then Saturdays you were open full day, weren't you guys
Saturdays
before?
are only open 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. pre-pandemic.
So there's 2 hours out of the week that you're no longer open, which would have been the equivalent of prior.
Correct, but that is due to change once we see how things play out, because we've been doing a very guided step reopening plan so that we can make sure that we're making the smart choices and expanding our hours and services. So
I was just trying to understand from the staff modeling about how we're using part-time hourly folks, just because it is a pretty substantial chunk of the budget here.
well, for like, yeah, I can understand that completely. But one thing that is hard to express unless you're here and watching it, for instance, this morning or just today, we had 210 items that were checked out. So we had to process all of those items. And we're not just having patrons come in and check items out like usual, but if you're doing the option of curbside pickup, we have to make sure that those items are pre-checked out to the patron. We have to wrap them and secure them so that they aren't, so they can stay safe, because everything's been in quarantine and that sort of thing. So it takes a lot longer to process the materials pre-pandemic, just because of all the safety precautions that we've put in place. So it also changes the way we check items in. Instead of being able to check items in every day, we now put items in quarantine for 4 days and we can't touch them. So that causes, a huge increase in how much can be checked in on each day. So
Right, I'm
I
assuming.
can very easily do an extra part-time person right now, in all honesty, but we're making it work with our part-time staffing as it is now. So
I would assume that just what you would normally process every day now just shifts out to every 4 days based on that. I know I just recently returned a book on tape for my wife, so.
So for instance, that item that you return, if we brought it in today, it would go in quarantine for 4 days and then we would check it in.
Yep.
But previously to that, we would have, if she reserved it, we'd have to go get it off the shelf, bring it back to the desk, check it out, bundle it all up and put her name on it. So then that way and then notify her that it was ready to pick up. So
Yep.
We've added extra steps to our whole process, but it's just to ensure the safety of us, our patrons, and just making sure that, that safety measure really is appreciated by all of our patrons that come in, because it gives them that extra sense of security of one more place that they can go when there really aren't too many options for patrons to go right now.
Are you guys following the governor's orders with regard to how you handle
Yeah, the universal guidelines.
Materials, yes, the universal guidelines for.
Yeah, and there was also
safer at home is what they call it. Yep.
Yeah, we're doing that. And then there's also the reopening archives, libraries, and museums. The Realm Project has been doing all their own independent studies of how long the virus lives on certain materials and whether or not you disinfect prior to or after. And also, we've been taking all of that into consideration with our quarantine. In the state library, for anything that comes in through interlibrary loan, that has a mandate 3 days of quarantine when it arrives at our library, and before you can send anything out, it has to quarantine for 3 days. So,
and you've seen the updated guidance on that from the CDC as well, then I'm assuming. Okay. All right. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome, Andy.
Select person Air.
This is observation. Let's put my 2 cents in. The conservation approved a tiny library down to Goodwill and senior project. And then I saw on Channel 9 News, they're doing tiny libraries in Portsmouth for elderly people. I don't know if that's an option for you guys. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
thank you.
Those little free libraries that pop up all over are great additions to any community. It's great since we're not doing our book sale right now because we can't take in those extra materials that we would normally have. But on the flip side, one thing those little free libraries can't offer that we can is home delivery services. And if an elderly patron can't get out to those little free libraries because they just are not able to leave the home, we can still bring them their materials if they need something.
Excellent.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, and so speaking to the rest of the questions from the Advisory Budget Committee that were focused on the, I'm sorry?
You missed Jim Sakosha.
Oh, sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Hey, Melissa, just 2 things. So it's like, are you guys getting like 250 books back like a day?
No, sometimes there's more.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how many items we've checked in today, but I know I easily checked in over 300 items. So,
okay, that's every day, or is that just like from the long weekend, you think?
It's, well, if you count back the 4 days, it all varies and depends on when people bring things back. Some days it's a couple hundred, some days it's over 400, some days it's just 50 to 100. So it all depends on when our patrons decide to bring their materials back.
Okay. And then are we back to charging for the library? Because I know you guys had said originally when COVID originally happened, you were just taking it easy on the patrons and stuff.
We are not charging because we still, as long as there's a pandemic going on, the trustees have voted to not charge fees or fines while there's a pandemic.
Okay.
So until that's lifted, we will not be charging the fees or fines.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the portion of the questions the Advisory Budget Committee created in reference to the warrant article. You said Lindsay's going to be presenting?
I believe so.
Okay.
Is that right, Melissa?
Can you hear me?
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome.
We can
And yes,
hear
Lindsay,
you.
we can hear
You
you.
can hear me? I can see you all. I don't know if you can see me. Such a bizarre world. But quickly, before I answer these questions, while Melissa was talking and you were all asking your questions, I wanted to point out something that was interesting is that the trustees over the last year, there is a trend nationally with public libraries dropping fines and fees in general. And that's been a thing that we've always discussed because, like I said, it's a trend and it's something that's constantly talked about at the state level. And so recently, when we made that decision during the pandemic and when we just recently decided to push that forward through the rest of the pandemic, we contacted as trustees about 16 libraries around where we live, and only one of them, and this is not during a pandemic, but in general, only one of them still charges fines and fees in general. So it's something that the trustees are just, consciously thinking about. It's the decision that we made for the pandemic, but it's definitely one to talk about in the future as well. It limits services for lots of people. And there's a stigma attached to it. And so it is a continuing conversation. But I do want you to know that we're taking it seriously. And we did do a lot of research on all the towns around us. So that's my 2 cents on that. As far as the questions that were given to me, I brought them to the trustees. Obviously, I'm the chair of the trustees and I serve on the foundation board, which is the Barrington Library Foundation, the fundraising arm of the new project. I was given all these things, brought these questions to the foundation and the trustees. I provided Connor this morning. Sorry, it sounds silly, but 2 very large words trying to get everybody's things together. But I was able to send in today our 2019 and this evening our 2018 state filing. Also our 990, I believe it's called. As well as I did submit the answer to all these questions in writing. So you should all have those, I guess is the point. So if I missed something, it's all there for you. But the questions that were asked of us, pretty straightforward. What is the balance of our foundation account? We've heard you loud and clear that when we speak about pledges versus donations, we will continue to say that we have raised $500,000 in pledges. Correction on hand, the cash we have currently, I believe the last update we gave you was around 250 something. As of this Friday, when she went to the bank to get the statement for us, it was 275,187 cash on hand currently. And what we do from here till the end of the year is we reach out to all of those donors. This has already started to happen, some by phone, some by mail, to remind them that this is what you've pledged for this year. A lot of people like to send it out at the end of the year before they do their taxes, everything like that. And we are seeing people already starting to send in their money for this year. So that's great news. Is that me? No. Okay. So that is that question. Provide an accounting of what has been spent throughout the library. I also submitted the trustee treasurer, Susan Frankel. Lots of you probably know her in town. She prepared some great documents for you all in Excel that just bullets out everything that the trustees have spent in the last few years. So you can see exactly what we've spent, where it has gone. So when we're planning for the future, some of those things won't need to happen again. Some of them will. But that kind of follows into the next question. How much of this is expected to be redone? And I think that it's hard to answer all of these questions really tangibly because April is far away. And we don't know what's going to change with the pandemic. I spoke with the architect this morning, and to try to get a budget together right now for what it would be in April, or March or whatever is pretty tricky right now. But many of the things that we have done in the past do not need to be done again. We did the needs assessment. We hired a fundraising consultant. The architect used to have to meet with us twice a week. That doesn't have to happen anymore because we've been doing this for so long now that we've got our feet wet. So some of the site work has already been done, measurements, etc. We will need to continue, obviously, working with the firm and creating budgets and assisting in our community information meetings, which is required for the bond. And then the question was, have the donors been approached to keep the donations longer than 3 years? And when I brought that to the foundation board, we discussed this, and it was always worded in our documents that donors can pledge their amount and pay it over 3 years. And if they're to want their cash back after 3 tries, not 3 years, I should have said, sorry, 3 tries at the ballot, they're absolutely, of course, welcome to have their money back. But unless they request it, that money would be moved to the trustees to continue this process. Whether at that point we changed our mind and we decided to do something else for the building renovation, etc. But that is what it says in our bylaws. We are still receiving donations from donors. We hear from some people who are not currently pledged that once the bond passes, they'll pledge. So, we do know that there's some folks that have money in their pocket but want to see the project go through first. It's always brought up to us about the grants, and I will tell you that Mr. Gingrich, Roger, who is the chair of the Library Foundation, has worked tirelessly over the last year and has hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants written out. And And upon all of his research, almost all of them, in order to receive a grant, you have to have passed it by the town first. So everything is lined up. As soon as that, passes, he can hit send. And of course, if we were to get those grants, that would always bring our budget back down even more. So yeah, the funds are still committed at the same level. We haven't had people pulling out left and right. That was obviously a concern with the pandemic, that people weren't going to be able to continue to pay. But I think a lot of folks have paid in a way that is manageable for them. So we haven't seen a drastic change in that. And lastly, an anticipated utilization of the proposed reserve fund. I just went back to the actual warrant article wording there because I felt like that was kind of explained. We were hoping to use it for building construction, for site work, architectural fees, and engineering, permitting, inspection, furniture. Obviously, this is we've come at this twice. We came 2 times with the same plan. It was rejected by the town to get the supermajority, though we will all agree that we did have, if you will, the popular vote. We just didn't have enough to get the bond. So going back to that drawing board, I know that you all know we did a lot of work this summer with the architect, with both boards, looking at if a renovation would be possible instead of a new library, and it wasn't. And I believe Connor looked at some of that, or came to the meeting, or saw the footage. But we definitely feel as though we've done our due diligence. And going forward from here, the goal is obviously to create a space that ticks all of the same boxes, but is less square footage, therefore a smaller amount. It is our intention to put this article on this March so that the people in the town know that while we aren't going forward with the bond this year because of the pandemic, we haven't gone away, and we think that this is a good way to hold us in the town over for the next year. And I see Dan's hands are up. I'm sure, Tracy, you will call on folks, but that's what I have. If anybody has any questions, and if I don't have answers, I can obviously get them for you at a later time.
Excellent. Steve Saunders, are you on here from the Advisory Budget Committee still?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did that answer many of the questions that the ABC had before I go to the select people?
Not totally. I think we looked at the language in the warrant article, and that's why we asked for more detail related to how we saw you spending that. And some of the items that you've listed in there are items that would occur after an approval to proceed and a bond has been issued, and would be paid out of the bond, which is a concern to us. And so what we were looking at and trying to see is how, if you were going to use fewer square footage in the new proposal that you're putting together, what of the needs would be affected by that. And we think that when you look at your needs assessment, number of linear feet at your need and shelving, all of those kinds of things that should be part of an assessment and a needs assessment for a library versus the digital services and how those are going to be provided and who provides those within that footprint is really something that would come out of and would require some funding. But that's not itemized here. You're saying that you're going to use the same needs assessment that you did for the other proposal. And so that's why we're looking for more detail as to what, and perhaps in what time frame would you be spending and for what items, which are necessary for this project. There's no question about that you expect the townspeople to fund. So those are the details that we saw lacking in the warrant article itself.
Okay.
Tracy, if I may, and Lindsay, sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure I iterate something that I mentioned at the budget committee meeting. And I understand that the budget committee has a different perspective, but I want everybody to know that I provided the language for the library trustees for that warrant article request. And it's specifically all encompassing because it's when a capital reserve account is created, it's very difficult to change the purpose. and evaluating the purpose statement when spending money. In my experience, I've found that if as long as you dot all your I's and cross all your T's to make sure everything that you would want to use this money for, you're able to. So, for example, if it's a $75,000 request and they spend $70,000 on design, but now they're building the project and there's $5,000 left in this account, to be able to use that towards the project opposed to just letting it sit in account. So what I heard, and for Lindsay and the folks in the library community, what I heard from the budget committee is that to support a warrant article request like this, they'd like it not to be so vague. They'd like it not to be so broad. And I'm not trying to speak for them, but I just want everybody to know that I provided the language based on a conversation with the library community. And I think everybody involved is open to changing it. But what I heard from the budget committee is maybe more specific, and I think it'd be up to the select board to determine, kind of where the best approach would be moving forward. So sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make sure that was out in the airwaves.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Obviously, you know how to explain this stuff in a different way than I do. I think that we also, we looked at other warrant articles similar to this that have gone in the last few years, and tried to base it off of those as well. Just like Connor said, none of us have experience in writing these things, and we're following the footsteps of those who have gone before us.
Very good. Steve, are you still on there, and do you need any more time for comment and review for the advisory budget committee?
I would ask other members of the ABC if they have any comments to chime in. I've had all my questions I think that I was going to ask. I've given them.
Okay.
So Peter or Dannon or John, if you're there.
I see Dan and Manshrek's hand up.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment. We haven't really had a chance to discuss this as a committee. We kind of looked at some of those things that we asked for, but I don't think we actually took a vote in the ABC regarding this, although we did address it at our meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for weighing in on that. I see that select person Ayer's hand has been up for a period of time. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm gonna speak in the I form. Me personally, I have some feedback, but I'm speaking in the I form for myself. There's so much uncertainty next year. I don't see how you can go forward with designing something. I think things have totally changed. And tomorrow, elections is a big outcome of next year's what's going to happen. And if you design something, I'm thinking you have to redesign it. And after the town spent $400,000 on town hall projects, I personally cannot see funding any more designs with these architects. There's so much uncertainty for next year, and I could not personally see funding any design till we know what's going on next year.
Can I respond to that, Tracy?
I think that
I don't have to. That's fine.
I was going to say, I think that Dan shared an individual opinion, not a select board opinion, and that we may wait and portion of the budget where we discuss warrant articles to weigh in on the details of warrant articles. Did any of the other select board members wish to speak? I see Melissa has her hand up from the library. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thanks. I just wanted to hop on real quick, and also just from a department head point of view, I had actually posed the idea of requesting this capital reserve for the building fund because I saw it in my short amount of time working with the town of Barrington, this capital improvement plan that just keeps hanging out in the surface, and we all put so much time and effort into helping Marcia get this through and putting our needs out there. And I felt that requesting this type of warrant article would also further support an overall acknowledgement that there are certain needs within this town that need to be met. And one of them is a properly sized library building, which we now know and have heard from others that it doesn't need to be the 13,000 square feet that we had previously gone to the town for. But I also want to revisit what I had mentioned in my history. There is an extremely long history of the Barrington Library not having a proper location or being properly funded or supported. And I thought it was kind of interesting to read over the years that the librarian wasn't even paid. They were given a gift of $50 in the mid 1950s. It was just crazy. But I know that it's really hard to ask for something in this type of environment that we are currently living in. And I approach this from a department head point of view in finding another way of making sure that there was some additional type of support for a building project as had been put forth in the capital improvement plan. And I also didn't really see it as any different than the fire department asking for money for a new fire truck or a police car, or even, the poor highway department looking to add on an office and break room. I'd love to be able to share that space with them if we were closer, because we certainly don't have that appropriate amount of space. So I just wanted to share just a little bit more of the reasoning behind why we thought going this route would also be beneficial.
Thank you for your input, Melissa.
Thanks.
I'm going to move on to public comments, and this would allow 15 minutes, up to 3 minutes per person. If there are public comments out there and you would like to speak, please use your mouse pad. You can click on the small hand outline in your upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can unmute your phone by pressing *6. You can call 664-0146 should you choose to speak. And I see Leah Elliott, one of our guests on the meeting. Go ahead, Leah.
Sure. I'm trying to unmute myself. So it's Lee. I'm the vice chair of the library trustees. And public comment here. Just wanted to reiterate that, asking for a new building for the library, I think is sometimes seen as an extra for the town, and, the library, they'll get their building someday. I think it's important to look at this as this is where some town employees work. They have very little space to work in, very little safe space to work in. Their break room sink is also the same sink that the janitor dumps the mop water down. So I think in terms of looking at this new building as a luxury is common, but I think it needs to also be looked at as this needs to be a safe place for people to work and people to congregate. So this for me is, of course, very, very close to my heart. But as a resident, I think it's important to look out for the people that are working in this building and take that into account as well. That's all.
Thank you. Lindsay, 3 minutes.
Yep, I just lastly wanted to say, just kind of in finishing and wrapping up, is that I think it should be stated again that a small group of people in our town got together, formed a nonprofit, and then it became a very large group of people and have raised $275,000 in the bank in 2 years and have pledges for 250 more. That's pretty phenomenal. I don't know of any other project in this town in the history that has had something like this. And I think that we really remember that, because it has a lot of value there when you think of it like that. And through the pandemic, this is a place where people have come and able to get services and come together. And I think that it's important that we keep all of that in the forefront of our mind as we move forward with the warrant articles.
Thank you, Lindsay. Vice Chair Knapp, would you like to speak as a town resident during public comment? You're muted, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay,
I would
go
just
ahead.
like to speak to something that was raised here through public comment, and I would request that Melissa and Connor please get together and address the safety issues that were raised here in public comment, because we cannot have public safety issues for our employees. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Go ahead, George Bailey.
I just want to thank Andy for making those comments. Thank you, Andy.
Okay, any other public comment? We'll give it about another 10 seconds and then I'll close the portion of public comment for this meeting. Okay, next up, review the meeting minutes from October 26th of 2020. Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the select board meetings from October 26, 2020 as written.
Okay, would anyone like to second that?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Knapp. Roll call vote beginning with Select Person Air.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Muted.
Jim?
Sakosha, aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Hardikoff, aye. Motion carries. Up next is our staff report from Administrator MacGyver.
Yes, the only thing here, we are at the first meeting in November, so I wanted to point out a couple of work anniversaries here for the month of November. And the fire department, Jonathan Janelle, this is his 22nd year. Aaron Paradise, the highway transfer support assistant, transfer station administrator, has been with the town for 12 years. Richard Smith, firefighter, for 8 years. David Ballion, caseworker, welfare caseworker, has been working for the town for 8 years. And Terrence Glazier started in the transfer station as an attendant last year. And also, I wanted to make mention of some veterans as we approach Veterans Day here in November. I have listed, I also have a couple of corrections and additions. So stay tuned for some breaking news on this list. But the Eric Baker, Tyler Courier, Scott Young, Sam Sorosky, Michael Bayer, Sean Guile, Donald Millette, Jake Rozier, Richard Smith, Chris Waring, Tyler Slankard, still very much thank you for your service, but he no longer works with us here in the town of Barrington. And then I also have a couple of additions, a few additions. Lila Chatham in the fire department, Cole Poth in the fire department, and also added Bob Brown, former employee of the town of Barrington, full-time employee, current part-time employee that helps us out in the winter. So thank you, each of them, for their service as we approach Veterans Day, which is Wednesday the 11th, and a town holiday. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Municipal Office Administrator Cottle.
Thank you and good evening. I have for your signature 2 administrative abatements. Sorry. One is due to the exemption deadline having been extended, and the other is for a property that was deeded to the town in March. And then the other documents are all documents that were approved earlier in the meeting minutes, the conservation appointment, and the raffle permit. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Under old business is the discussion about the town government's Facebook page. TA MacGyver, I assume you want to discuss that.
Yeah, so just a plug, and plan to carry this over in future meetings just for the folks that are following along and paying attention, and a reminder to our select board members, department heads, and as I said, community members. So the town's town government Facebook page is live online under the management of Tiffany Cottle in consultation of your town administrator. And so obviously, as we've discussed previously with the select board, it's our intention that this is an additional communication channel with residents of town, an opportunity to take the job that we do very well, making our government open and transparent, and spending a little bit of extra effort, packaging that up in a fit and format that the community members are experiencing on a daily basis, i.e. social media. And so certainly welcome members of the select board to promote the information on the page, but also let us know, as representatives of the community, folks come to you with questions for information, or I'm sure a lot of times you folks experience information online that either isn't factual or isn't the whole story. And, it's our job to make sure that the factual and accurate information is available to residents. So just let me know, let Tiffany know, give us an opportunity to put some content together if it doesn't already exist, or point folks in the direction of where the accurate information does exist. So don't hesitate to let us know. And I know I hear from a lot of you on a regular basis asking just simple questions to make sure that you can correct the record online. So please still do that. But if there's things that you'd like to see and like to be able to share with folks in the community, let us know. Give us an opportunity to do that. So like I said, I encourage you to promote the page. We plan to have some kind of live updates through the election tomorrow of the turnout and information as it comes in. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for the opportunity to promote that.
Very good. Select Person Air, do you have a quick question or comment?
Yes, I want to make a statement. FYI, I do not do Facebook. Expect me to be any changes on Facebook.
Thank you for your input, Select Person Air. Moving on to new business. Accept the trail book sale donations into Conservation Fund. Before we talk about this for a blanket approval, can we talk about where the funding for the creation of the book came from?
Yes, a resident of the town of Barrington paid out of their own pocket for the printing of the first 400 books.
Okay, would you like to discuss the acceptance of the trail book sale donations into the Conservation Fund?
So this is the financial mechanism required in order to make a deposit into the Conservation Fund. So the request to the Select Board is very specific. It's a blanket approval, but specific in the sense that the only funds that would pertain to this would be any donations in excess of the costs for the trails books, and the accounting for that will be managed by the Conservation Commission chair and treasurer, and on a periodic basis they would transfer those funds to the town to be deposited into the Conservation Fund. And so the statute requires the Select Board to approve those revenues, if you will, or the deposits into the Conservation Fund. And the statutes also allow this kind of blanket approval, so we're not coming back to you for every $10 for a sale of a book. So the administrative plan would be to make sure we made a deposit at the middle of December before the end of the year, so that balance stayed updated in the fund, and then make deposits as necessary in 2021. Happy to answer any questions.
You need a consensus or a vote on this?
I have feedback.
I stop waving at me, people. Do you need a consensus or a vote on this, TA MacGyver?
Vote, please.
Okay. Are there questions, comments, or concerns regarding this issue? Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that I get your attention. I didn't mean to upset you by waving, Madam Chair. My comments are, first of all, this is an appointed committee, and I would like to know if there is any exclusions with them handling, with receiving money and handling it on the basis of doing it as at will point. I do not like giving anybody the blanket right to do this. I think that if we're going to accept donations into the Conservation Fund, that we should have it done at a individual on time, so that we can turn around and to ensure that the donations are properly noted. In the case of the fact we have a tremendous chair now and conscientious of budget wise, but in the future, if that should change, then we would have to ensure that that new individual would be mindful of the monies. So I just say that I don't think that we need to do this. We should, not do a blanket.
Chairperson Hardikoff?
Yes.
So I just wanted to add, I think that's a great point that Select Person Bailey made, and if it makes a difference to him or not, I'll just share that another administrative step that's been an important part of the process is consultation of the town treasurer. Conservation Fund is under the hands of the town treasurer, and so him and I work together with the Conservation Commission to evaluate the whole process. He would also have oversight on the accounting and depositing of the donations into the fund. And so I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware that the town treasurer is involved and would remain involved and is comfortable with the request for blanket approval. So we're not taking up time at every select board meeting collecting $20 or $30.
Okay, select person Air.
I know the individual. I'm not afraid to say his name, but basically, it's a good book. It sounds like wildfire. The individual has put up his own money. He get reimbursed, and there's extra money involved. That is going into the conservation fund. And make it very transparent. I'll put my name on it. There's no hanky panky, and I believe in this person and the money, and it's a good thing. So don't ruin it. Thank you.
Select person Bailey.
Thank you. I would like to let Mr. Ayer know and everybody else know I'm not being accusatory of any individual that sits there. I had these questions because, one, they're appointed, they're not elected, so when they're handling dollars, I wanted to make sure that that was part of the fact that was on there. And secondly, I made it known that I was not in favor of a no blanket. I would like to point out to the members that the agenda on the library, every week they have exception of donations. So, I mean, that is not anything that's going to be very difficult or anything else of time consuming for us to say, do we accept $10 and put it in the fund? At least that way it's in the minutes and we have a constant control over it. Thank you.
If I'm understanding you correctly, select person Bailey, your suggestion is that the Conservation Commission in their monthly meeting or biweekly meeting minutes, that they indicate the number of sales of the book and the amount of revenue. Is that correct?
No, it is not. I can accept that, but what I was saying is for us to have a line item on our agenda that says we accept that money to go into their fund. That's what I was having to do with it.
Okay.
And I don't take offense at many things, but I'm not being accusatory of anybody here saying that they're not doing a proper job or there was a chance that it could be mishandled. Thank you.
Very good. Select person Air, you still have your hand up. Do you need to speak?
I thought I lowered it.
Okay. So Vice Chair Knapp, go ahead.
Yep, I was just going to comment that I agree with select person Bailey from the standpoint that I don't like to just hand out blanket okays for funds. I mean, granted, this is accepting of donations, but I also don't think it's a bad deal for either them to note it in their minutes and bring it before us, or for us to note it. It gives us some visibility as to what's going on with the Conservation Commission as well as the sale of books, so that we can properly support them.
Okay. So I guess at this point, we have two options. One is that we ask for a motion for a blanket, or that we continue to discuss and someone put a motion forward of how we might go about, maybe it's December acceptance of the sale revenue each year. Go ahead, select person Air.
I'll make the motion that we accept donations that are in the minutes and approve minutes. So is a paper trail for you, and we do it before the fiscal year, December, or whenever the treasurer feels appropriate when to transfer the funds.
The town treasurer on this meeting, Connor?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Two quick things on that. Excuse me. The statutes require the Conservation Commission to accept the donations at their level as well. And so if select person's Air suggestion was that the Conservation Commission minutes include the acceptance of this much money from this many books, that should happen anyways, and that would happen. The trouble with doing it less frequently, depositing the money into the conservation fund less frequently, is that money has to exist somewhere. So either the Conservation Commission holds on to it in an envelope before turning it over to the town, which I wouldn't recommend, or they turn it over to the town deposits it, but they have to wait to transfer it into the conservation fund until months later. So that's why the treasurer's preference would be to have the ability for this very specific purpose, just donations from the sale of these books, to be able to deposit the money into the conservation fund when it's received, so it's not floating around in an envelope with a Conservation Commission member or in the town's general fund without being accounted for in the Conservation Fund because it hasn't been moved.
May I input into that?
Oh, good. Thank you,
Oh,
Peter.
Peter, you are here.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this technology stuff, trying to figure out what's going on. But I think the bottom line is this whole thing did not get started well. I don't think it really got organized in a way that if we had a chance to review it, that we would have agreed to. But I think given where we are, which is these books are out there and they have certainly a good connection to the town of Barrington, that I think what Connor's proposing, and again, he said I agree and I do, that we don't want to be seeing little dribbles of donations come in on a regular basis, because it isn't just the board trying to accept them, but it's the finance department and other people trying to account for it. So when Connor said we'd really like to see the first deposit be maybe the middle of December, it's really just trying to reduce the amount of work everyone has to spend on this project. And again, if they want to reprint the book, what we've suggested they do is have a vote of the Conservation Commission, take the money for the printing out of the Conservation Fund, and then again, as money is collected, to present it to the town to go to the Conservation Fund. But this could be an ongoing issue of work, which we're trying to avoid by having this blanket approval for the acceptance and have the revenue come into the Conservation Fund just periodically, not regularly. So I understand what the concerns are. I certainly do not like the way this project started, but to me, that's water over the dam, and we're just trying to make the best of where we are.
Thank you, Peter, for weighing in. Select person Air, and I want to just be mindful that we do have a first. We have a motion out there for the acceptance of this. Go ahead, select person Air.
I thought my motion clarified some of that, and then at Thursday's meeting, I have a better understanding of the feedback with the extra work, and how it came about. I think we can correct it, and the conservation chair can spend money with the votes, so we could approve it and then have the funds go to the conservation. And it would be less work on staff.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Knapp.
I was just going to make a comment that with Peter's feedback on that, I would make a motion as written to accept it.
So you're seconding you're changing the motion, or you're seconding select person Air's motion?
Can somebody clarify exactly what select person Air's motion is?
It was that the accounting for this take place in the Conservation Commission meeting minutes each month. Correct, Dan?
Or each meeting, whatever.
And that would allow for the accounting of it with a blanket approval.
So they would account for it and accept it.
And we won't. Then I'll change the motion. No more private money will be spent on the printing. It'll be through the conservation to clarify things.
I think we're going down a rabbit hole here. We're making this way more.
Yeah.
It sounds. Think about it. We can clean up the water that went over the dam, and now any future printing will come out of the conservation fund, and all funds will be directed to the conservation fund directly.
So as I'm understanding it, there's a motion before the board to provide for monthly accounting of revenue that comes in from the sale of the books, the insistence that future printings of the books come out of the conservation fund, and that there is blanket approval for acceptance of the trail guide sale profit as donation into the conservation fund. My understanding is that your motion, select person Air. Okay. I see that Select Person Bailey would like to speak, and then I'm going to ask for a second if there is one. Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
If that's the way I see this is moving on, I'd like to have a sunset clause considered and also possibly be in there and have the sunset clause would be effective until 12/31/2025. Time they'd have to come back before the board again to renew the blanket.
So would you accept that modification to your motion, Select Person Air?
Yes.
And do I have a second?
I
I'll
will
second.
second with that. Okay.
Okay, so I have a second from Vice Chair Knapp. Roll call vote beginning with Select Person Air.
Air, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all for that. Next up are Select Person reports. No one let me forget Vice Chair Knapp. I always skip over him when we get to this.
He's a lucky person.
Select Person Air, can you give us a report out of your committees?
No Town Land Committee, and then Conservation's this week. And I haven't attended the school board because I get pre-invited and stuff, but so I'll get some feedback on the schools.
Okay, thank you for that. Select Person Bailey, report out.
Thank you very much. The only meeting I had was for the library trust, the library meeting on October 27th. There was just, it was the same, it was numerous pieces. And then when they started to discuss budget and a few fines and what have you, I figured that was a time for me to ask permission to leave, and I was granted, so I left the meeting early. But it was overall, it was a good meeting and what have you. And I have one comment to make on 11/11 for the veterans. They're at 11 o'clock on the 11th Pine Grove Cemetery. I believe it's the American Legion, and some other individuals from the town are going to have a ceremony for the veterans on that.
Excellent. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank
Report out from Vice Chair Knapp.
Yep, let me unmute myself. Sorry about that. So planning board meets tomorrow, but obviously with voting, I will not be at the planning board. And then we haven't had a new technology meeting, but Connor had shared some information regarding a handful of questions around dark fiber and some other items related there. And then also something I'm going to have to raise before the board, but my 10-second Tom syndrome apparently kicked in when this came up, but Marcia raised to my attention that through the planning board, I had committed that I would come before the board to see if there is board support for proposed sidewalk project at Route 9 and 125. And I was going to draft the letter on that. And apparently in my infinite wisdom and short-term memory that I have going on lately, I do not remember all the specifics of it. So I would like to get clarity around it, and I will bring it back before the board, and I will draft it up and present it to the board at our next meeting.
Okay, and that will go under new business?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. Select Person Sakosha, report out, please.
I have nothing to report out. I wasn't able to get to the last meeting, and I haven't caught up with Sarah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and I will tell you, I was remiss in attending the 2:30 this afternoon meeting for the transfer station, but I can tell you they're working on, from the notes I'm seeing back and forth, certain fees for bulky waste, and they're working on disposal of specific battery types. So I appreciate all of their work in my absence, although I often think to myself, not my area of expertise. So it's interesting for me to listen to the experts on that. And then the advisory budget committee had met and gone over the portion of the library budget. And I really appreciated their thoughtful approach to the warrant article and their questions regarding that. Other than that, I had no other report outs, so I will move to public comment. Public comment is 15 minutes, 3 minutes per person. If you would like to speak during public comment, please certainly mouse over the little hand in the upper right-hand corner of this meeting and alert us by clicking on it that you'd like to speak. Unmute your phone by pressing *6 and speak out that you are out there and would like to speak. Or you can certainly call 664-0146 if we're not doing a good job paying attention to either of those. Jim Sakosha, I see your hand up. Would you like to speak during public comment?
Yes.
You're
Okay.
on.
So I just wanted to say that I will be taking a pay for tomorrow at the polls. I will be donating that salary to the food pantry.
Excellent. And I see that Melissa's hand is up. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thanks, Tracy. One thing I forgot to mention, because I didn't want to do it during the budget presentation, was I spoke with Mark Morrow this morning from the Highway Department, and I just wanted to let you guys know and the public know that on November 17th, which is a Tuesday, there's going to be some tree removal on our property, and that the access to this area is going to be very limited. So I just wanted to get that out into the community and let everyone know that coming up in 2 Tuesdays, we will be having some tree work done, and I believe it involves a crane, so it's going to be kind of awkward over here, but we'll make it work. But just wanted to give you guys an update on that.
Thank you. Any other
Thank
public
you.
comment at this time?
I do not see anything coming in, hands up or comments.
Okay, I'll give it about 5 more seconds. Do we have a need for non-public tonight?
Yes, land, legal, and reputation.
Very good. Seeing as there's no other public comments, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to move to non-public?
Aye.
Sakosha, and do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
And a roll call vote, please, beginning with select person Air.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff, aye. We'll see you all when we come back out of non-public. Thank you all.
Hey, Connor,
Yes.
did you send a non-public meeting? I think I see it. I got it. Never mind. It wasn't in my file earlier last time I looked, but it's there now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
What's up, Dan?
Ah, my life sucks.
Oh, it doesn't suck.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you own a business, you got your own
All right,
place.
we have a quorum.
All right.
Be
I
looking for a
make
motion to
come
seal
out.
non-public minutes indefinitely to avoid adversely affecting the reputation of those discussed.
I wasn't make that motion. You weren't in such a hurry.
So moved.
I'll
Second,
make that motion.
Andy seconded it.
Here
Roll
I.
call vote.
Aye.
Sakoshai.
Nap aye.
Hardikoff, aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Have time to think about it.
Roll call vote, beginning with select person Air.
I'm on the fence, but I'll say aye.
Bailey, aye.
nap aye.
Sakoshai.
Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Hey,
George, I'll see you at the polls tomorrow morning.
I'll see you tomorrow morning. Take